Thanks for tuning in to Investment Insight brought to you by McCay Wealth Advisory. My name is Hayden Proffitt, and joining us today we have Brent McCay. And Brent, donor advised funds, charitable contributions, things that we think about monthly, yearly, throughout the year, at the end of the year. At various points in times, they become more and more apparent, or they're in front of you. Can you hit on just what a donor advised fund is?
Sure. So donor advised funds are pretty cool vehicles. They've been around for a long time. They've been around since the 30s. But they really became etched into tax law in 2006. One of the things that's nice about donor advised fund is you think about, there's these things called foundations. You know, everyone's always like, hey, I'd like to start my own foundation. You know, I'd like to do something in memory. I know for when I look at my children, you know, we're getting ready to go on a trip, and one of the things that I would love for them to do is instead of when they inherit some money from me, instead of them spending that money on themselves or buying a Ferrari or a toy, how nice would it be if my 7 children got together at Christmas and were giving money away to others? I think that's a very important thing. So one of the nice things for investors is what's called a donor advised fund. Donor advised fund is where you give the money away now, but you can decide later what charity gets the interest. Now, the benefits of that are pretty significant. One big benefit is you get the tax break. You know, you give that money away now, you get the tax break now. So if, for instance, Hayden, if you go in and, you know, you inherit a farm and you sell it for big money and you don't want to pay taxes on all that money, you can give that money away now. You know, I always talk with people, I joke about, if I win the lottery, I'm going to give it away to charity. Well, you have to be careful. You actually can't give away all your money and it not be taxable. And so one of the things that's nice about donor advised funds is you give the money away now, and then the charity you can pick out later.
Right. And I got another question on that as well.
Yeah.
So if I pick a charity now, that's XYZ 501c3, it's a qualified charity, and right now I love what they're doing. I'm in love with what they're doing. And then management changes, and later on, I'm not exactly it's kind of the apple has lost its shine, so to speak.
Yeah.
And I'm not as in love with what they're doing. I would like to send it to another 501c3 or somewhere else. Can I change it later on?
So if you give money to charity and you give them principal, it's theirs.
Right.
With a donor advised fund, if you're giving them mainly interest or a portion of that account, you can then change where it's designated, as long as it's not an IRA. There are some special rules with IRAs. But outside of IRAs, you can basically change it. So like, let's say, for instance, you really like St. Jude. But let's say St. Jude says, hey, you know, we've decided that helping kids with cancer be cured is not our goal anymore, and we're going to start becoming a nature conservatory organization. We're like, well, that's kind of lost the mission. And so one of the things you can even do too is, let's say, hey, you know, you have a whole flock of kids, and you're just like, you told your kids this is the mission. And your kids can actually change it after the fact too. So what's nice about donor advised fund is you still maintain control of a lot of the charitable endeavors for that fund, which is powerful.
Right. And I know we're mostly kind of talking about the cash proceeds, but this goes with property as well. If you have like a super low cost basis
Sure.
in a piece of property.
Probably the majority of assets that are moved in donor advised funds initially are properties or low appreciated investments. If you own a business or you own something that you paid very little for and you want to avoid taxes on it. Because the benefit is if you were to transfer, let's say you were going to sell your business, and let's say you paid $100,000 to start your business, now it's worth $5 million. You could transfer that asset into the donor advised fund, and you don't have any capital gains, then you could sell it, and then you could use that money to benefit charities. But you wouldn't necessarily want to give a charity $5 million at once. So maybe you say, hey, I'm going to give them 5% a year. So if I've got $5 million in this account, I'm going to give them $250,000 a year. It's going to be a sustainable gift where that money is coming all the time. And also, it should earn interest, and it should grow if you invest it correctly. It'll be invested or earn interest, and then you've got a sustaining gift. And the benefit of a donor advised fund, the biggest benefit is administration. You think about if you run your own foundation or you run your own 501c3, you've got to administer that. You've got to have accountants. You've got to have lawyers. You've got to have all those people involved to make it all run. The benefit of donor advised fund is you basically give the money, and these organizations handle that administrative umbrella for you for some kind of cost or a donation. And because they're doing it that way, your main job is just giving money away versus trying to administer or trying to deal with all the paperwork, which a lot of people don't want to deal with.
Right. And, with an individual brokerage account, or just a cash checking account per se, if you donated one of these donor advised funds, that's kind of in one bucket over here. But shifting over, how does it change if you're donating out of an IRA to a donor advised fund?
So if you give money out of an IRA to a donor advised fund, you have to designate who's going to eventually get that money.
The money.
And so there probably are some caveats there where you could change it later. So you would say, hey, I really like St. Jude, so I'm going to give money out of my IRA to my donor advised fund, and then eventually I'm going to give the money to St. Jude. But however, there is no current IRS requirement. So if St. Jude wasn't doing what you liked, you could just leave it there for 100 years and let it earn interest and grow, and then maybe until St. Jude came around, you could change it. And of course, we'll have to check with the legality of it, but if those charities cease to exist, then the way I understand the law is they would find a charity that's similar to the original gift. And so if the charity didn't fall what you wanted and you gave it out of an IRA, yeah, you're supposed to give it to them, but if that charity ends up going away sometime, because every business, every charity has a lifespan. So,
sure.
I was reading about the Knights of St. John, who were kind of the first Red Cross group. And, that group's not really the Red Cross anymore. Now it's the Red Cross. So charities just pretty much change over time and become different organizations. But donor advised funds under current law can sit in perpetuity. One of the things that a lot of these political foundations, people get mad because they don't use the money for the charitable endeavor. With the donor advised fund, there's no current requirement to give 5% a year.
Right.
Which is huge, because if the markets were down, or if your investment had lost money, or if you had non-liquid investments, so if you have money that you can't get, if you're giving property something, you can't just give 5% a year away because maybe there's no rent, maybe it's empty. Well, here it goes a donor advised fund. You can wait till it starts earning interest again and having rent again, and then give money away.
Right, and you can invest it how you see fit, right?
Correct.
Based on how aggressive you want to. If we're just talking in stocks and the equity market, basically, but you can invest it aggressively, stocks and bonds, yeah, aggressively or conservatively, just based on how you want to.
And that's always up to you, but a lot of donor advised funds are in non-liquid investments,
right?
For the benefits of the taxes, and
that makes sense because there's not a 5% rule on a piece of property. It's not very liquid until it sells.
But once it does sell, once it is liquid, then go from there.
Yeah. So, anything else you want to add about donor advised funds?
Really, just the biggest thing is to be thinking about how this plays in a plan, because a lot of times when you're giving money, especially principal gifts, having sustainable charities, you don't want to give a charity too much money. A lot of charities, if you think about it, let's say there's a charity I used to be on the board of, and they had a $400,000 a year budget. Well, if I wrote them a check for $400,000, they would stop raising money. And I remember this exact thing happened. They were an organization, they were doing really well, and they had a big golf tournament, and they raised $40,000 a year. Mm-hmm. Well, one year they had extra gift, they had extra money, someone had given them a principal gift. So what's the first thing they canceled?
The golf tournament.
The golf tournament, because they didn't want to do it.
Right.
When they canceled the golf tournament, all the people that were used to giving them $40,000 a year took that money, gave it somewhere else. Well, then that principal ran away. It was gone. It was over. Then they tried to restart the golf tournament, and they were only raising $10,000 a year because people got out of the habit. So one of the things that a lot of people don't think about is you can give money to a charity and put them out of business. Mm-hmm. So you don't want to give too much money to a charity. If you give more than 5% to a charity, they'll become reliant upon you, and they'll stop asking for money.
You want to help them, right? You want to help them by an interest donation or some sustainable recurring revenue. An interest donation on, let's say you had some 5% investment that gave them on a $100,000 principal, you gave them $5,000 a year. That's enough where they can rely, or they can have that amount, but you didn't give them the full $100,000.
Correct.
So that they could, we can sit on that and deplete it potentially.
Well, that's the biggest thing, because you got to think about charities and business are typically separate skill sets. If you're very charitable and you got that big heart and you really love helping people, not that it's saying a lot of times some of the finance geeks like us may not have the biggest heart, maybe more left, right brain, or, type situation. And so you want to be very careful when you're giving money to charity not to give too much. So donor advised fund is a great vehicle where you can give it, to the charity but do it in a way that's sustaining, in a way that they still serve the mission that you want done. So it's a great vehicle.
Well, good deal. Well, thank you so much for tuning in today, and I hope you have a great day.
Thanks.